Imagine a place where you can ride on a roller coaster, wave swinger or galleon ship all day for only £3.50. A place where you can nearly suffocate in a wooden box or suffer rope burns from the wire nets in the wizard's castle. This is a place where hipposauruses fly through the air, where Whimsy the dragon will greet you and your friends, and clocks will come to life and talk. Well, in my 90s childhood, such a place did exist, and it was within walking distance of my house, located within the Yellow Mall of a newly built MetroCentre in sunny Swarwell, Gateshead. Metroland opened in 1988, but just 20 short years later it had closed for good, the former children's paradise being replaced by a large national cinema chain restaurants and a multinational corporation amusement arcade. Despite being closed for over 17 years, the indoor theme park Metroland has gained cult-like status within the Northeast and is fondly remembered by the 90s kids who have now grown into adults. When Metroland's closure was announced, it was still attracting over 1.2 million paying visitors annually and was ranked the 8th most popular leisure attraction by Visit Britain. So where did it all go wrong for Metroland? In this video, I'll take a look back at the history of this magical indoor theme park, revisit some of its rides, and ask, was life just better in the 90s? To examine the history of Metroland, we'll have to go back to 1979, when a power station's ash dump waterlogged site at Swarwell was chosen for redevelopment. John Hall, a miner's son from Ashington, who was now a developer, was determined that this should be a retail and leisure site built by and for the people of the North East. The MetroCentre in Gateshead opened in 1986, funded predominantly by the Church Commissioners of England, and lots of large retailers signed up to the scheme, as well as UCI, who built a 10-screen cinema on the site. The MetroCentre had 4 malls: red, green, blue and yellow, and Metroland was Phase 3 of the overall development within the Yellow Mall, with the construction work of Metroland carried out by contractors Rush and Tompkins. On the 23rd of February 1988, Metroland opened to huge excitement. This was Europe's first indoor theme park, and its intention was to complement the MetroCentre's retail areas by providing rides to attract toddlers, children, teenagers and even grandparents. The day before opening, youngsters from local schools had been invited to sample the rides. Metroland was designed and managed by Canadian firm Forek, who had experience of theme park management and design in North America and Europe, and the park was going to be managed by 28-year-old Canadian Daryl Barker. Metroland featured 70,000 square feet of rides, play areas and amusements for all ages, and the intention was that kids could ride all day while parents shop. The design and installation of Metroland was done as much as possible by local firms and businesses who benefited from the economic boost. More than 250 local builders were employed by 37 subcontractors to build it, the final bill coming in at £20 million for construction and fitting out. The equipment came from over 20 suppliers in many countries. Metroland employed many staff operating rides as engineers and leisure assistants. When it opened, there were 116 part-time staff and 50 full-time. The park featured tiled floors, painted wall and ceiling hangings, as well as even an exact replica of High Force behind the galleon ship. Metroland was truly unique, and a lot of time and effort had gone into its creation and one-off design. There were hipposaurus models, pirouetting pigs, talking clocks every hour, and fish fountains and foliage everywhere. The noise was deafening and the smell intoxicating. And as for the theme, the park centred around the tale of King Wiz, Captain Swashbuckler, Practical Joker and Whimsy the Dragon, who would often tour the park in their outfits. As well as the park being dominated by the huge wizard's castle, which housed an enormous soft play in which kids could spend hours. The opening price was £3.50, which was around 2 hours' pay for most people at the time. In 1989, the park was taken over by Funday Limited, who invested a further £1 million, and the park continued successfully into the 1990s. Funday Limited's chairman, David Wolfe, was also chairman of Spitting Image, and soon there was a Maggie Thatcher puppet outside the entrance of Metroland. David had wanted adults to have as much fun in the park as the kids. Metroland's Canadian manager, who had been at the park since his employer Foreck opened it 2 years earlier, was off to Australia in April 1990 to manage Dazzyland, another indoor theme park in Adelaide, which looks eerily like Metroland in another dimension. Metroland originally opened with 9 main rides, a soft play, amusements and some smaller attractions. There was a later refit and update to New Metroland in 1996, but the original rides in 1988 were: the Flying Galleon was the ship's original name. This ride was a giant pendulum which held 33 passengers in the ship section, with a large rubber tyre which could be heard during the ride rubbing against the ship's keel, which rotated slower than the ship swung in order to bring it to a halt. The middle section was for the babies and the ends were for the Rajis. There was the Metroland Express, which was a train that took you on a tour of the park. The Kiddies Carousel, or also called the Wee Whirligig, was an early ride. The Balloon Racers was a big Ferris wheel with balloons. Later renamed to My Beautiful Balloons, it consisted of 8 arms attached to a central hub driven by hydraulic motors, and the hub and arms could rotate in either direction. Whizz's Whirly Chairs was the original name of the wave swinger. It was one of the most popular rides at Metroland, and the feeling of flying through the air high above whilst the top oscillated in a wave-like motion is a feeling I'll never forget. It had 48 individual swing seats, and kids often lost their shoes in the fountains when they weren't twisting the steel cables high above the ground. The ride was built in what was West Germany and featured a Baroque Bavarian style with hand-painted scenery. The dodgems were originally called the Mad Motorway. Metroland's Flying Circus was a kids' ride of planes and helicopters. Motor Circus was the name of a small roundabout for littler kids. And the roller coaster was called the Galaxy Express originally, which was custom made to fit the available space and park layout, with riders entering from the left and leaving to the right. It had a run time of 60 seconds and a top speed of 12 metres per second. The roller coaster would do 2 laps, and if it was near to closing, sometimes 3. The race back round from the exit to queue again up the stairs was always a mad sprint. There were also the motorboats, battery-operated boats and Volkswagens, battery-operated cars. The rides could either be paid for individually using the iconic Metroland tokens or an all-day pass. There was also a 9-hole golf course called Joker's Green and an Omnivision 180-degree cinema which took you on rides to the Grand Canyon. There were also themed shops and eateries such as Royal Frosty Treats and the Curiosity Shop. Finally, there was Wizard's Castle, which featured what felt like miles of wire rope, box caves with very little breathing holes, slides which kids backed up in, mirror mazes and huge ball pits. Metroland was a great success when it first opened and hosted a 1-year anniversary with a cake baked by the army. From about 1994, Metroland began to allow visitors into the park for free. Previously, parents had to pay to supervise their kids. In August 1996, Arlington Leisure took over the park and invested over £2 million updating and upgrading all the attractions, relaunching the site as the new Metroland. Arlington Leisure already had experience in running family entertainment centres at major resorts across the UK. The new Metroland was pretty much just the old Metroland with a paint job, but they did get a new waltzer, which was originally £1 per ride, and managed separately by an external company until 2003 when the lease ended and it was incorporated into the wristband price. The new Metroland rides were all renamed to play on alliteration, and these now included the the new roller coaster, which was really just the old roller coaster with a paint job, the wonderful wave swinger, which was also the original, a new whirling waltzer, which originally started life at Bridlington Seaside and had an American jukebox and its own sound system and light show. The swashbuckling ship was renamed from the Flying Galleon. The balloon ride was now called My Beautiful Balloons. Mad Motorway was renamed to the Disco Dodgems and given a rebrand with new artwork and booming music. The Policeman's Parade was a ride for toddlers and young children. Happy Helicopters was a ride similar in motion to the Wave Swinger, but was smaller and gentler and featured helicopters with large perspex windows. Fabulous Fighters was an aeroplane ride which had hydraulic arms controlled by buttons from within each plane. They lifted and lowered them individually, and it was originally named Red Baron after the German World War I fighter pilot. The Terrific Train was just the old train ride and still made customers wait at the barriers to cross. And there was another brand new ride, the Jungle Jeeps. The Jungle Jeeps worked like a model car rally racing game, where the power needed to operate the cars is taken from a metal ridge in the centre of the track. As part of Arlington Leisure's revamp of the new Metroland, the Wizard's Castle was now revamped as Montezuma's Soft Play, with updated play areas and a sheer drop and snake slides. The wooden boxes which haunted my childhood were now gone. However, the creepy talking clocks, tick and tock, remained. There were now new eateries, including Barnaby's Deli Diner, an American-themed cafe, Jerome's Ice Cream Parlour, and Barnaby's Soda Stop in the park. The adjoining Mr. B's arcade having revamped games, including dance mats and electric current machines, as well as a sweet paradise. Metroland also used to put on corporate days, where the place could be hired out by entire companies such as Nissan to entertain parents and kids. In 2005, Arlington Leisure made a loss of £56,000, and the group's turnover as a whole was down 6% on the previous year. This marked the second year of losses for the Arlington Leisure group of companies, and investment in the park was not likely to be forthcoming. For Metroland, there was a confusing array of entrance prices and options. The park was mainly attracting teenagers who'd enter the park for free, spend minimal amounts such as single rides on the waltzer and arcade games, and watch Cheryl Tweedy and other acts perform on the stage. The 2000s hadn't been kind to Metroland, and despite drawing in hundreds of thousands of paying customers each year, MetroCentre management had their eyes set on the site. It was thought that the UCI cinema in the Blue Mall had outgrown its space, and there was an opportunity with the head height of the Yellow Mall to create a more modern arena-style cinema and update the whole Yellow Mall, which was beginning to look tired and dated since 1988. Additionally, the external facades were now allowing water ingress. Consultation started in 2006, and a planning application was made in 2007 to update the Yellow Mall and turn a large part of it into a cinema and leisure facility. This also meant the end of the bowling alley, which was on the ground floor underneath Metroland, and the end of the laser quasar too. There was of course huge local outcry at the loss of a much-loved attraction. A petition was started by staff, and a Save Metroland website was also launched. In the official channels of planning applications, Gateshead Council received 683 letters of objection, including 2 petitions with a total of 834 signatures. The objections to Metroland's closure included loss of public family amenities, loss of public service, it wasn't in the public interest to close Metroland, and loss of jobs. There were 2 letters of support received from this guy and this guy. However, it was all to no avail. The planning application was approved by Gateshead Borough Council, apparently being in line with national policy at the time, and because provision was still being made for younger visitors, such as the Namco Funscape and Outdoor Park, Arlington Leisure went into administration on the 4th of April 2008, and Metroland's last day of rides was the 20th of April 2008. Metroland had just over 20 years to entertain kids of the North East and make its mark as a cultural icon before it was closed and took over by a chain cinema, chain restaurants, and a soulless amusement arcade. As for the rides, a lot of Metroland's assets were sold off. The Wave Swinger ended up at Butlin's Minehead, and according to the website is still operating today 37 years later, now outdoors. The roller coaster ended up in Devon at Big Sheep and is now green. As for the other assets, they were bought up by people wanting a piece of Metroland memorabilia. The Metroland tokens alone can sell for over £100 on eBay. Metroland may be gone, but for those of us who grew up going there like me, its magic still lives on. In memories of lost shoes on the wave swinger, the smell of bleach, the sound of talking clocks, the claustrophobia whilst lost in a box maze in the wizard's castle, and the feeling that for a few pounds you could step into another world. Metroland's story reminds us that places can disappear, but their impact doesn't. It lives on in the nostalgia of a generation who will never forget the happiest indoor theme park in the North East, and perhaps the world.
You know, the kingdom was never quite the same again. Work was done, and Metroland was a special place where many folks recalled the simple joys they'd nearly forgotten. And none of them ever guessed that good King Wiz, who ruled over Metroland with great joy, was in fact the very same man as their own Royal Majesty.